Boyne, Striped Pyjamas, Chapter 4, Part 2. Who are all those people? She asked in a quiet voice, almost as if she wasn't asking Bruno, but looking for an answer from someone else. And what are they all doing there? Bruno stood up, and for the first time, they stood together, shoulder to shoulder, and stared at what was happening, not 50 feet away from them. Sorry, not 50 feet away from their new home. Everywhere they looked, they could see people, tall, short, old, young, all moving around. Some stood perfectly still in groups with their hands by their sides, trying to keep their heads up as a soldier marched in front of them, his mouth opening and closing quickly as if he was shouting something at them. Some were formed into a sort of chain gang and pushing wheelbarrows from one side of the camp to the other, appearing from a place out of sight and taking their wheelbarrows further along behind a hut, where they disappeared again. A few stood near the huts in quiet groups, staring at the ground as if it was some sort of game where they didn't want to be spotted. Others were on crutches, and many had bandages around their heads. Some carried spades and were being led by groups of soldiers to a place where they could no longer be seen. Bruno and Gretel could see hundreds of people, but there were so many huts before them, and the camp spread out so much further than they could possibly see, that it looked as though there might be thousands out there. And all living so close to us, said Gretel, frowning. In Berlin, on our nice quiet street, we only had 6 houses. And now there are so many. Why would Father take a new job here in such a nasty place and with so many neighbours? It doesn't make any sense. Look over there, said Bruno, and Gretel followed the direction of the finger he was pointing and saw, emerging from a hut in the distance, a group of children huddled together and being shouted at by a group of soldiers. The more they were shouted at, the closer they huddled together, but then one of the soldiers lunged towards them and they separated, and seemed to do what he wanted them to do all along, which was to stand in a single line. When they did, the soldiers all started to laugh and applaud them. It must be some sort of rehearsal, suggested Gretel, ignoring the fact that some of the children, even some of the older ones, even some of the ones as grown up as her, looked as if they were crying. Told you there were children here, said Bruno. Not the type of children I want to play with, said Gretel in a determined voice. They look filthy. Hilda and Isabel and Louise have a bath every morning, and so do I. Those children look as though they've never had a bath in their lives. It does look very dirty over there, said Bruno, but maybe they don't have any baths. Don't be stupid, said Gretel, despite the fact that she had been told time and time again that she was not to call her brother stupid. What kind of people don't have baths? I don't know, said Bruno. People who don't have any hot water? Gretel watched for another few moments before shivering and turning away. I'm going back to my room to arrange my dolls, she said. The view is decidedly nicer from there. With that remark, she walked away, returning across the hallway to her bedroom and closing the door behind her. But she didn't go back to arranging her dolls quite yet. Instead, she sat down on the bed, and a lot of things went through her head. And one final thought came into her brother's head as he watched the hundreds of people in the distance going about their business. And that was the fact that all of them, the small boys, the big boys, the fathers, the grandfathers, the uncles, the people who lived on their own on everybody's road but didn't seem to have any relatives at all, were wearing the same clothes as each other. A pair of grey striped pyjamas and a grey striped cap on their heads. How extraordinary, he muttered, before turning away.